Okay, I apologize that I don't come here and am able to speak your language, so I have to subject you to mine. What I'd like to concentrate on tonight is the work really of the last 8 or 9 years. The work since the late 80s has been design and architecture. But I want to give some idea of where that came from, because it came from another direction. It came from art, but even before that, it came from writing. I started as a writer, as a poet. When I was writing towards the end of the 60s, the important thing for me was to think, how can I move? How can I move across a page? How do I move from left margin to right margin? What makes me move from top of the page to the bottom, etc. In other words, I was trying to make words do what they possibly can't do. I wanted words to be matter. I wanted words to be material. When you see a word, you're supposed to see through a word, look through a word to content, to subject matter. I wanted more. I wasn't the only person who was doing this. I wanted words to be looked at. I wanted them to be material on the page. I wanted words to be almost integers of my movement across the page. You as reader, your movement across the page. After doing poems like that for a while, it occurred to me that if I'm so interested in movement, why am I limiting this movement to a page this size? There's a street, there's a floor out there, there's a ground, there's a street. So by 1969, work of mine shifted context from writing to art. Why art? Because at that time, I think what interested a number of people in art was the fact that art seemed to be a non-field field. Art seemed to be becoming a field that had no inherent characteristics of its own, except for the fact that it was called art. So art was a field into which you could import from other fields, from psychology, from sociology, from history, from news. Okay, when I started doing stuff in an art context, the position I was in was something like this. All my life up until that time, and I wasn't exactly young at that time. I was around 28, 29. All my life up until that time, I had assumed that I knew what my ground was. My ground was this piece of paper in front of me. Now I had decided that I didn't want that ground anymore. I didn't want that ground to rely on. So I was in the position that now I don't have the page to rely on. I'm in the street. I'm out in the world. What gives me a reason to move there? So I started doing pieces that try to give me that reason to move. One was a piece called Following Piece, done in 1969. Where a number of people, some writers, some artists, were picked to do a piece over the period of a month in 1969, do a piece involving the street, specifically New York streets, because this was a show that was going to last a month. The way I saw it at that time, that I had to do something. I had to do something every day of that month. If this was a show about New York streets, I should try to do something that could potentially allow me to use all the streets in New York. So I did a piece with a very simple scheme. Each day, I would pick out at random a person walking in the street. Each day then, I would follow a different person each day until that person entered a private place, home, office, whatever. so that following episodes would range from, say, 2 or 3 minute episodes when someone might get into a car and I couldn't follow, ranging from that to 7 or 8 hour episodes when someone might go to a restaurant, a movie, etc. Okay, with regard to the general question I had, now that I'm in the street, what gives me a reason to move there? Doing pieces with schemes like this gave me that reason. I mean, what's probably important about work of mine, I mean, significant about work of mine, I have no idea if it's important, but significant to the way I work is I pick out a set of directions, and this has been true from the beginning to now, a set of rules. I never start with wanting to form an image. If there is an image, the image comes from carrying out a structure, a method. To get back to the question I had at that time, now that I'm in the street, what gives me a reason to move there? I could do pieces like this. They could give me that reason. It was important. Particular space was always important. It was this piece had to be done in New York. If it was done in a small city, I would be an aggressor. I would be somebody taking over somebody's space. In New York, as far as I could tell, I was hard. I don't even know if I was noticed. If you walk in the street in New York, you are following someone, and someone else is following you. Yeah. Okay. After doing pieces like this for a while, it occurred to me that am I doing something that's cheating? And what I meant was I was using my own person in pieces, and maybe I should try to give what were some reasons why I started doing pieces in the art context. I started doing pieces by using my own person. Obviously, when I realized I wasn't writing anymore, I could have picked another medium that would have taken the place of the page. It probably occurred to me then that if I did that, just as I had gotten to the point where the page didn't seem useful, any medium I chose as a replacement, I would eventually have to drop that too. So it seemed to me that rather than focus on a particular medium, rather than focus on a particular ground to be worked on, why don't I shift that focus? Shift that focus from ground to instrument, to myself, who then could choose whatever ground happened to be available at the time, whatever ground happened to be convenient at the time. Now, this was the time it was very easy to focus on myself as a person because the culture was doing that at the same time. This was a time when the common language of the time was finding oneself, as if the self is something lost, as if the self is something you have to go to some trajectory to find. In other words, the kind of stuff I was doing then, and some other people were doing in an art context, was the same kind of thing that musicians were doing. Neil Young, Van Morrison, single voice, long song, a single voice trying to examine the self. Find the self. In other words, when I was doing this stuff then, I think the attitude I had is, what else could you do at that time? This is what the time was already doing. Okay. I started this by saying that after a while I started to wonder, am I cheating? I'm using my own person in pieces, but I'm not making use of the personness of that person. I'm not making use of some kind of notion of self. And I thought, if I'm going to go on using my own person, maybe the motion of pieces has to change. In other words, the motion of these pieces was I, a person, an agent, attend to it, a world considered as if it's out there. I find some way to key myself into that world. I started to think, maybe I have to concentrate on person more. So I have to concentrate on me. I have to focus on me. How do I prove prove both to myself and others that I'm concentrating on myself? One obvious way is to do something physical to myself. So I started to be a kind of prime agent in these pieces. For a while, and I kind of skipped. I didn't bring any examples of these in. I was concentrating on myself. I was doing something for myself, doing something on myself. I started to think, but I'm isolating myself. How do I get out of that isolation? Maybe I can focus on you. Maybe I can focus on you, the viewer, you the visitor to an art space. So by 1971, I was starting to think of, I want to make a space where I face you. This is a 1971 piece called Claim. It takes place in a two-level space, street level and basement. Upstairs, on street level, there's a video monitor next to a door leading downstairs to the basement. So the video monitor acts as a maybe announcement to viewers, maybe a kind of warning. Seeing and hearing what's going on by means of the video monitor, a person decides whether to open the door, come downstairs. The piece is a 3-hour piece. I'm seated on a chair at the foot of the stairs in the basement. I'm blindfolded. I have earplugs. I think I don't remember now. But the blindfold I can see. The earplugs I get. I have with me 2 lead pipes and a crowbar. I'm constantly talking. The 3 hours are spent in me constantly talking aloud, but talking directed to myself, saying things like, I'm alone here in the basement. I want to stay alone here in the basement. I don't want anybody to come down in the basement with me. I'll stop anybody from coming down in the basement with me. I'm alone here in the basement. I want to stay alone. In other words, using talk as a kind of self-hypnotizing device, trying to convince myself that this basement is mine. So whenever I hear someone, so I didn't have earplugs. Whenever I hear someone coming down the stairs, I swing the lead pipe, swing the crowbar in front of me, as the title of the piece says, claiming this space. Okay, what that started for me was thinking of art as an exchange system. Art was an occasion in which person in the role of artist can meet, come face to face with person in the role of viewer. So what I liked about pieces like this was that art was this meeting between me and you. At the same time, certain things bothered me. It bothered me that I'm set up on a still point in the space. A viewer is asked to come towards me. In this case, a viewer is asked to go through lead pipes and crowbars in order to get to me. And I started to think, this isn't a meeting. A meeting should be between equals. And I started to think, all my pieces are doing are confirming an art world hierarchy, in which the artist is on a higher plane than viewers, in which viewers have to struggle in order to get to the art. In other words, everything I thought I hated about art as religion, artist as artwork as a kind of altar, artist as a kind of priest, it started to seem to me that's what my work is doing. So I had to do something to get out of that. And it seemed to me that maybe the problem was a problem of focus. As soon as people entered this art space, I was the target. I was the prime point. And I thought, maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe I have to become part of the space. Maybe I have to become part of the architecture of the room. Thinking like that led to a piece in the beginning of 1972, a piece called Seatbed. Conventional gallery space, about 8 meters wide, about 15 meters long. Halfway across the space, the floor rises to become a ramp, so that as a person enters the gallery, person walks across the floor, probably without thinking about it so much, starts to walk up the ramp, which is the continuation of the floor. this piece is activated for a number of days over a 2-week period. Each of those days, I'm underneath the ramp. I'm underneath the floor, moving around under this space where people are walking, and my attempt, what I left out, as a viewer walks up this floor, walks up this ramp. There's a voice coming up from the floor, a voice saying something like, I'm doing this with the person on my left, I'm touching your hair, I'm running my hand down your back. So I'm underneath the floor from opening time of the gallery to closing time, so from 10 in the morning to 6. My attempt is to constantly masturbate. In order to do so, I can use viewers as help. Help in the sense that I hear people's footsteps on top of me. I can build sexual fantasies on those footsteps. Those sexual fantasies can keep my activity going, keep my masturbation going. Every now and then, the masturbation reaches climax. Viewer on top of the ramp might be thinking something like, oh, he's done this with me, he's done this for me. In any case, an attempt to join relatively private space under the floor with social space, public space above the floor. I mentioned that the piece was done for a number of days, from 10 in the morning to 6. I mentioned that not so much to stress the endurance test quality of the piece, though probably like it or not, it became that. For me, the 10 to 6 was important, and that it was important to me that this piece each day didn't have a kind of entrance, didn't have a kind of beginning. I had to be part of this floor as far as any viewer knew it. I had to be part of this floor before the first viewer came in the morning. I had to remain part of the floor when the last viewer left. Okay, Seedbed raised certain questions to me. The biggest question was, if I'm not even seen, do I have to be there at all? Which I think was a reflection of a larger question. I started to worry. This piece was done in 1972. I started to think, has my work fallen behind the times? My work picked up on the notion of finding oneself. It picked up on notions that music of the late 60s was doing, a notion of the 60s of kind of withdrawing. You know, you isolate yourself in order to find the self. But it wasn't the 60s anymore. It was 1972, 73, 74, and I started to realize that I and other people were starting to have very different notions of self. Self wasn't this kind of precious jewel that you tried to separate and contemplate. Self probably existed only as part of a social system, a cultural system, a political system. So I thought I have to maybe try to catch up with my time. In order to do that, I started to feel that maybe I can't be part of pieces anymore.